Hello and welcome to our first episode of Vancity Talks, where we're here to talk about things that's related to young people in Vancouver, pursuing truth, and hopefully learning something that you can take with you and be a better you when you finish watching our podcast. Today we're joined by Samantha. Samantha, I just have an icebreaker question just to throw out at you before we even get to know who you are. Samantha, are expensive dinner dates automatically considered good dates? Yes or no?
Well, the short answer to the question is no. I don't believe that dating is based on how much you spend on a date. I think it depends on your connection with the person that you're with. I've been on
Mm-hmm.
many dates where it was completely free. Just go for a walk and you get to know the person. Maybe grab a coffee for $5 or something, and it was an amazing date. I've been on dates where it was expensive, and maybe there was no connection. So I really don't think that it depends on how much money you spend.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good response. So that's really interesting. Let's get to know who she is. Samantha, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you're into, what you're passionate about.
So my name is Samantha Siu. I'm born and raised in Vancouver, BC. I am a dating and relationship coach. My passion is studying human behavior, why people do what they do. I have a background in counseling psychology,
Mhm.
and yeah, it this whole thing came up when I started to go online and finding, you know, uh, finding a partner. And
Mhm.
for me, it was just really difficult. I would get a lot of likes, but not match a lot of people. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I wonder why that is.
Mhm.
There were a lot of online profiles that were quite like cringeworthy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I feel like people don't really know how to present themselves online.
Gotcha. So
Right.
this is really interesting. Uh, I haven't dated in a long, long time. Samantha, I am now married for up 12 years now.
Oh,
My
wow.
wife and I got married in 2012,
Yeah.
and I grew up in an era where we never had this dating app that was so prevalent.
Hmm.
So dating culture is like completely different.
It's different. Yeah.
But I know that this is a very, very, very big topic for today, for our viewers, and for anyone that's interested, which is why we have you on
Hmm.
as our first interviewer, our first guest for our first episode. Thank you for being here. Yeah, go in. Let's do a little bit of a deeper dive now. The dating culture. Now you're a dating coach.
Hmm.
Yeah. What? T- Run
So
us through that. Like, what do you normally do with someone that's like, I'm a client. I need advice from a dating coach.
yeah, so I specialize in coaching men specifically. Eventually, I'd like to get into coaching women, but I know that there are a lot of guys out there that don't have a lot of female influences. They don't have a sibling, a sister, or female friends, or they don't have like a cousin or somebody that can kind of guide them through the mind of women and what we want. So my clients are generally people that are looking for long-term relationships, commitment. I'm not looking to help the people that are looking for, like the one night stands or the short term hookups. I'm also not a matchmaker. I've had a lot of clients in the past say, well, Sam, why don't you just help me run my dating profile? Or do you have any single girlfriends you can introduce me to? And that's definitely not my area of focus. I like
Mm-hmm.
to help, men that are willing to put in the work,
Mm-hmm.
set the intention, and have an open mind.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. And I think that's part of the difficulty. There are some people who don't have the right attitude and the right mindset
Mm-hmm.
when they're entering the dating space.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys, no, I could be wrong. I'm just assuming, but like a lot of guys could be into the hookup culture.
Yes.
It could be a lot of girls too. But I don't have extreme like all these statistics on us right now. But having the right attitude
Mm-hmm.
is important getting
Mm-hmm.
into the dating world. Maybe a question I'd like to ask you is, how can someone how would you know if a client has the right attitude in dating? Is there something that would tip you off, like that maybe they're in it for the wrong reasons or they're in it for the right reasons?
Usually a client who is has a growth mindset, who also has an open mindset too. they are willing to learn, willing to grow, and willing to put the effort in. Someone who is very interested in just an overall healthy, long-term, committed relationship, and knows that it's not just all going to be rainbows and butterflies, and it's going to be an instant satisfaction. It's going to take work, and there are going to be struggles and maybe compatibility issues.
Right.
So that's kind of like kind of can gauge between like a good client versus a bad client who,
Right.
just wants a quick fix and wants to find their person. Right.
Right. And if they're coming to you, I'm assuming like, yeah, they're open for learning. They're open for
Yeah.
change. So that's probably a good sign that like, oh, they're contacting a dating coach. They're probably open for that. It's probably people who, well, not everyone goes to a dating coach. I think it's pretty rare, in my opinion. Is it rare?
Yes, because well, it's not rare. I would say there are many types of men out there. I find that there are some people more on the stubborn side of things. They're kind of set in their own ways and unwilling to kind of change and grow. The I think men and women are very different the way we think about things, and so I'd like to be able to offer that bridge that gap between the two brains, I guess you can say, or the minds.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly, guys are very stubborn. I'm a guy, very stubborn.
Yes.
My wife would agree. Does age play a factor? Let's say someone comes to you, they're like maybe 28, 29, 30. Are they more stubborn, or is someone that's younger, like 20, 21, 22, are they more stubborn just because they're young and reckless? Like, any opinion there?
I would say, the old saying, kind of sometimes. I mean, it really depends on mindset, I think. But, there is a part of where they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks sort of thing. That kind of, you see a little bit of that too. But at the same time, the people that reach out to me are generally the people that want to learn and want to grow. I've had an instances where guys have reached out to me because they wanted to get to know me personally.
That's not right.
They may say, hey, are you single? Like, what's your dating?
Right, red flag, right there, red flag.
So I would say, let's take the focus off of me. We're here to help you, and let's focus back on, what you're willing to get out of this experience and what your expectations are.
Right, that's really good. Yeah. So this is completely new to me. I'm my first time meeting a dating coach. So if I could just have a scope of what it looks like. Someone contacts you. They're looking for advice. They had bad experience in the dating culture. Maybe they're tired of dating. And then what's maybe one or two things the first things you look at or you talk about?
So I offer a free 30-minute consult, and that's just basically for me to get to know them, for them to get to know me, kind of see if there's a match, like in terms of, it's like finding a counselor. You always have to kind of interview a few people to see what fits for you, what doesn't. And for me, I like to know kind of what they're looking for, what their expectations are for the sessions with me, what they're hoping to achieve, and I can kind of get an understanding of, their very briefly, like their history, what have they been struggling with the most in the past, and then kind of give them like a roadmap to where I see I can help them, or guide them to where they need to go or where they want to go.
Right.
So that's kind of how my initial I guess session 30-minute free consult with them goes, and then they can choose how many sessions they want to book with me.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah,
it's important. Yeah. Hello.
Okay, 10 minutes.
All right. So I am just dying to ask you, there must be a lot of maybe common things or trends that you see in the dating world right now that lead to people either having difficulties or they're struggling through it. Could you share a few of those? And I would like to maybe follow up on maybe why those exist, and also how can guys and girls can try to help themselves as they're in the dating culture now.
Yeah, so some dating trends I've been noticing, let's start with that, would be women starting to date younger men. And I think it might be because of, the women having a more driven, ambitious sort of lifestyle. A lot of women have great jobs, degrees, they're very independent. They can basically hold their own. And I'm seeing them kind of, trend towards maybe dating younger, whereas back in the day it used to be more of a taboo or more of like a faux pas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also seeing a lot of dates that are kind of trending towards a wellness oriented experience. So, for example, sound bath dates, meditation retreats. Um, Also, what else did I have? Sound bath,
Interesting.
meditation, and cold plunges or co-ed sauna steam room type of things that don't require or don't involve alcohol. Even in
Okay.
even in LA, they have music festivals or dance parties hosted at a coffee shop, and there's no alcohol involved in it as well. So there's a big wellness trend.
Gotcha.
Um,
Very interesting. Let's go back to that first point.
yeah,
First point was there's a trend that women now are dating guys that are younger.
younger. Yes.
That's very interesting, and
Mm-hmm.
that due to the fact that women are being more ambitious with their careers, that
Mm-hmm.
they are spending more time. And this is my interpretation now. My interpretation is that girls are spending more time in their school, graduating,
Getting
and
degrees,
getting
getting
degrees,
great jobs.
sacrificing dating at that age,
Yep.
and then when they've graduated, then now they're starting to date at more like 26, 27, 28 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're seeing that they're dating younger guys, maybe they're in the 22, 23-year olds.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a trend in terms of like infertility rates are climbing. So a lot of women have, more power in terms of kind of holding off on having kids and kind of prolonging their careers and then having kids maybe even at a later date compared
Right,
to what it was before.
right.
Yeah.
So right there seems to be so many topics that come out of this. A huge one that would interest most men is that, if I could imagine, that they're considering dating older women, that they're
Mm-hmm.
dating some. If someone is 25, 26 years old,
Mm-hmm.
a guy, and they're now faced with like, oh, there are women who are dating,
Mm-hmm.
who are on the market, but they're like 29, 30 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and and a guy needs to ask himself, when do I want to get married, or like, do I want to have kids?
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming most guys do want to have kids. I could be wrong there. You can correct me if I'm wrong. That or they don't even think about it until it could be too late. But
Yeah.
that is that one struggle about the idea of having kids and when to settle down and having a family.
I think it really depends. I just find that people are kind of pushing it because back in the day, when we look at our parents' generations, people were having kids at the age of like early 20s or something. And if you were past that age, it's kind of like a no no, right? You want to kind of, people are having kids by then. Now we're seeing, a lot of people kind of waiting to get married, maybe not even getting married, waiting to have kids, maybe not even have kids because there's the use of let's say like birth control, freezing their eggs, all these other new technologies that are and science-based things to kind of prolong starting a family.
That's right. So I think
Yeah.
so that's definitely a trend.
Yes.
Fewer couples are having kids, and fewer couples are wanting to get married.
I
That's
also
definitely
think
a trend.
because it's an expensive city to live in, so people are rethinking their ideas of families and reproduction and just having a family.
So that is super relevant
Yeah.
to all of us, those who are watching, those who are in Vancouver. It is super expensive
Mm-hmm.
to live in Vancouver, and that impacts a dating. It impacts getting married,
Mm-hmm.
settling down. And may I ask? And I, of course, I want to come back to that next point. You talked about like dating has now more of the wellness thing. I want to get back to that one,
Mm-hmm.
but then now, because of the high cost of living, do you find that most of your clients that come to you for dating advice, like, are they living at home with their mom and dad? Are they still living at home? And does that impact how girls would perceive them? Like, oh, you're still living at home, like you don't have it all together. Could you maybe go into that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to ask them kind of what their living situation is, but I don't necessarily pry into, are you living at home? Do you own a place? Do you have investments? Like I don't really go into that. I mainly just focus on, what they're looking for, and what I find is that sometimes a lot of guys are like, oh, I want, a 10 out of 10 girl. I want her to be ambitious. I want her to, want a family, I want all these things, but I have to kind of remind them that their expectations have to meet their reality as well, right? When you have a list of all these things that you want, you also have to be able to provide those those things that you look for in a partner, right? Because you have to be able to offer something, just as much as you're wanting to want something, I guess,
Gotcha.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, your original
The
question
well,
was,
the wellness thing. You're saying
yeah.
that there's more of a push of less alcohol on the
Mm-hmm.
dates. I think that was the focus. That there was less alcohol.
Yep.
How does that change the dynamics of dating? Because I wasn't born yesterday. With alcohol, everyone's blood circulation's elevated.
Yes.
Everyone's happier. So now there's less alcohol in
Yeah.
in dates. Talk about that.
So we live in Vancouver. Vancouver is very lifestyle, balanced lifestyle, kind of based and focused. So what I've seen so far is a lot of people just, moving away from alcohol, because alcohol, it becomes like, okay, let's meet at a bar and let's just have an interview over alcohol, which becomes kind of like, it's overwhelming to some people, and it's also it. How do I say this? It's not the way that people want to kind of live anymore. I hear a lot of people say, I'm just so sick and tired of meeting a guy at a bar, or I'm so sick and tired
Mm-hmm.
of just having like a sit down interview, right? Dating isn't shouldn't be like an interview. It should be fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people nowadays are meeting people through run clubs, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of takes the pressure off of dating, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing an event, or you're sharing an experience, it takes a lot of the pressure out of, I'm here to date somebody. I'm here to, like,
Gotcha.
so
It
it's
sounds like this would benefit a very like sporty person, very outdoorsy, active person, and then less so for a guy that like plays video games all day. Like, like it's so it seems like if there's an encouragement that you might
yeah.
have for
Hmm.
guys watching that
Yeah.
it is to make use of Vancouver lifestyle.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many groups out there. There's actually an app, that it's called Meetup, and you can basically go into these groups, and there's so many groups out there. There's groups for book clubs. There's group for video games. There's groups for board games and card night, and just walking groups and pickleball groups and all these other groups that you don't necessarily have to be a certain category. You don't have to be super extroverted. You don't have to be super athletic or sporty. So it's basically just you kind of taking the effort to, look for something that maybe you might enjoy, whether it's a book club, right? Something, or just like a foodie group or something, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
just kind of meeting people based on your own interests or your hobbies, right?
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting, yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
that core point that there's less alcohol
Yep.
that's in the dating sphere,
Mm-hmm.
and that there seems to be like a trend. Like we don't want to necessarily have that in like having the alcohol in it, and
Involved,
yeah,
yeah.
involved. That's really interesting, and
Yeah.
I take that as a positive.
I
I
do
feel,
too. Actually, there's
right.
been so many studies on the effects of alcohol and the brain, and how it actually, in the long run, really damages and inherit, like, in what's the word I'm looking for? Um, it inhibits your brain functioning, right?
Right.
So because Vancouver is such a wellness-driven city, and we're seeing a lot of trends kind of moving towards that sort of
Right. Making
lifestyle,
better decisions.
making better
I think
decisions.
that's really
Yes,
important
yes,
because you're trying to find your life partner. I would
yes.
hope that you would want to make a good decision. Not to say a little bit of alcohol is terrible, but it sounds like a good thing that we're
Mm-hmm.
trending away
Yes.
from having alcohol necessary in dating. So let's go the opposite direction. What are some trends that are more of like that maybe like red flags? If people are watching
Mm-hmm.
are wanting to know like what's a red like is this a red flag in a girl or is that a red flag in a guy? Could you talk about a few of those that people should be watching out for that maybe they aren't aware of?
Red flags in a girl or guy. If they aren't reciprocating, for example, if you're the one always making the dates and they're kind of, or they're kind of not communicative, I think that's a pretty big red flag. I think also if all they want to do is meet at a certain time of day, whether it's like, in the evenings or only on the weekends at 10 p.m. or later, then you can kind of gauge and kind of see what their real intentions are with when it comes to dating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm speaking, I guess, right now in general, like for both men and women. Like if someone only wants to see you Saturday evenings or last minute um, meetings or something.
Right. And then the first one was if they don't reciprocate the effort
Yes, that
and
you're putting
the
in.
attention,
Mm-hmm.
then it seems like it's a bit of a lopsided
Lopsided relationship that's
right.
probably heading towards the ghosting
Mm-hmm.
direction, right?
Right. If I could push back a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to find that if a guy gives too much attention to a girl,
Mm.
it's like maybe they've learned like, oh, maybe I went in too hard too fast, and so I need to learn. And
Mm.
then in their next relationship, they're trying to pace themselves, and so it's hard to find that pace. And so
Mm-hmm.
maybe just to throw a very potential grenade question to you is,
Okay.
should a guy be leading more in terms of the pace of the relationship and the attention, or should a guy be more passive of like let's feel out what makes this girl comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll just be there if she does give me attention, right? It's one the one thing is being more active, and
Mm-hmm.
but then that could be like, oh, I'm giving her too much attention, but then the other side is like, oh, I'm too passive, that oh then this girl thinks like I'm not into her. Like,
Mm.
could you talk more about that?
Yeah, so the whole dating experience, I think, is a bit of a balancing act. So it's not either all one way, balls to the walls, like I'm gonna go hard, and then all the other way where it's completely passive and avoidant. It should be like a combination of kind of who you are as a person, and I would say that I would suggest actually to a lot of men to really get to know themselves and to be really self-aware of their dating patterns and their behaviors. So for example, if they're extremely anxious, they should kind of learn to be less anxious and kind of, let things kind of just come as they go and like let it flow. And if something doesn't work out, maybe it was in their best interest anyways, and that person wasn't actually right for them. So I would really highly suggest most men to just really do a lot of like learning of themselves, and putting down their non-negotiables and what they really want, and knowing their boundaries and their intentions and things before getting into a relationship, right? Because it's a really what's that word? It's tough when you're kind of so focused on the other person, and oh my gosh, like is this person gonna get back to me or not, and do they like me, and how much of a lead should I take, and what should I do? Because then you're getting in your head, right? And you're not, your body and your mind, it's not really aligning with each other, right? So usually that sounds more like an anxious sort of attachment style, and yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to get people to really just take a step back and just take a relationship not less seriously, but just kind of like take a step back and just kind of refocus themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
let things flow,
Mm-hmm.
and let the chemistry kind of go, and
Mm-hmm.
just be themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm following with you
Yeah.
because I know that it is in the best interest of guys to have the confidence of who they are,
Yes.
what they're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that speaks volumes.
Exactly.
However, Sam, if I could say, it's very hard to become that person, to be so sure of yourself, because I think the one fear that most guys have, and I think this is 99% of all guys, is that fear of rejection.
Yes.
That fear of rejection, the fear of taking risks, it's so hard. That's why they're always in their head of like, oh, this girl is so pretty, she's so cute, but she's probably talking to 20 other guys, and I'm afraid she's just stringing me along for another free lunch or another free dinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
That um that point of transitioning from fear to confidence is such a difficult path,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if is there one thing you can offer guys, one encouragement, one insight that you can encourage them by saying by just having that confidence and not
Mhm.
necessarily always second guessing themselves. Any encouragement that you might have for them?
Yeah, so I think confidence is super attractive. I think that people just need to really work on themselves, because even if it's not in a relationship, if you're seeking a job, right, you have to have confidence, right? And it's going to take a lot of rejection for you to get to that point of, confidence, right? It's kind of more like a practice makes perfect type of scenario, right? You'd have to kind of take a lot of hits before you're confident, right? I don't think that people are just kind of born with the confidence and they're just out there and they don't care what people think. I think it's kind of like a learned behavior. So yeah, I think I would say that. I would say it's just something that people just have to practice and get better at, just like public speaking, just like um, the fear of being alone or the fear of being by themselves, right? So it's something that people can just practice and get better at over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great
Did
points.
I answer? Well, you had another question. You said, what was your other thing? You said encouragement, words of encouragement, and then what
If
did you
there
say
were,
again?
if there was,
Someone who's afraid that they're going to take it being take for granted or something like.
yeah, I think,
Yeah.
guys will struggle with just the fears of rejection, and they're always expected to be the first to,
Provide
yeah, provide first
financially. Yeah.
financially. And so the, essentially the reality of dating for guys is like it's an expensive endeavor. It honestly is.
Yeah.
And so as the time continues with either
Mm-hmm.
more women becoming more equal or
Mm-hmm.
egalitarian,
Mm-hmm.
but but until then, guys are still going to struggle with like, well, this is the first date. I don't know you, so
Mm-hmm.
the assumption, the default is
Yeah.
I have to pay,
I
and if I don't
actually.
pay, I'm not going to be considered as
Yeah.
a potential mate. Are guys expected to pay on the first date? And there's so much pressure for guys to do that,
Mm-hmm.
because if we don't, we'll feel like we're not matching other guys who are willing to do that, right? So,
Mm.
what can you encourage guys about this whole maybe gender roles and expectations in dating?
So what I would say about that is that there are a lot of ways to make a date great without having to spend a lot of money, right? For example, you can easily make sandwiches at home, do a picnic if the weather's nice. What goes a long way in for women is that if you put in a little bit of effort. So if you know that they really like books, right? Maybe say, hey, let's go to a bookstore and check out some books and maybe go to a park and go read or something, right? Also, women really appreciate men that are very considerate. So, for example, hey, it's really cold outside. I'm going to come pick you up. Do you maybe bring a jacket? That is all free, right? It doesn't cost a lot to, make a comment like that. Or let's say if you guys are meeting at a place together, say, hey, text me when you get home. I want to make sure you get home safe. Or just even just communicating with them and saying, how's your day? Or asking them what they enjoy, what they like, goes a really long way when it comes to dates. And it doesn't always have to be financially, like, has to be a fancy white tablecloth dinner. There are a lot of ways to go around it and make dates super fun, super
Mm-hmm.
exciting,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, just pleasurable. It
That's
doesn't have to
awesome.
be so much pressure on like how much I'm spending, you
Yeah,
know?
that's really good. That's really
Yeah,
good advice.
yeah,
That way it could be more financially wise to
yeah,
go on these dates,
yeah.
and guys aren't necessarily the wallet isn't hurting as much,
Yeah.
right? And perhaps also my tidbit is, if there's a girl that you're chasing, and if she is wanting to be like wine and dine on,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's not the girl that you're actually looking for. If she's expecting so much, and she's not paying attention to the little things that you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
the cost efficient things that you're doing that shows care and attention.
I also think it's important to because I've been doing a lot of research on relationships as well, is that some people are, let's say, the girls that like the expensive gifts and the dinners and all that stuff, their love language tends to be gifts, right? If you know anything, if you know the five love languages. And so some men are very happy to give gifts because that is their love language as well. Not to say that those relationships won't work. It's just it really depends on the individual itself. So it's I wouldn't say it's a one size fits all. It's not like, oh, people that loves gifts and experiences and expensive dinners aren't going to be in long-term successful relationships. Um, I think that really depends on the individual themselves. There are guys that would rather just give a gift and they're happy to do that, and a girl's happy to receive the gift, and both people do their thing. Like one works a lot and one does their own thing, and they work perfectly well. So it really depends on the individual themselves. Yeah, it might not be a traditional relationship that most people like a traditional style of relationship, but sometimes it can actually work that way. Yeah.
Let's get into dating profiles and like their, I guess, like on the dating app, everyone has a profile. It's sort of like, no, you're as if I'm extremely act as I'm extremely clueless.
Okay, so you're recently single. We want to help you out. You don't know where to go, what to do, right?
Right. Then you get a dating app type of thing, and then you have an option of like what to showcase on there.
Yep.
And so this dating profile should help guys now look at a girl's profile and see what she's interested in, and then target like, how can I now show that I care about her in these ways, right? So you have to be like sort of, guys need to be like,
guys need help.
guys need
they need someone to hold their hand and tell them,
right. Guys need help in holding the hand. What are up to 3 areas that you think guys really need that help? Either working on their own dating profile. What are some things that they're having trouble with that you find?
So I think every individual is very different, right? Some guy may be really good socially, like they know how to talk to people, they're not shy, they can make friends everywhere they go, but they may not have the eye for or effort or time in their profiles, right? Their online dating profiles. Some guys are, just really shy, and they want to stay at home, or they just have no experience with dating. So I think for me, it varies from person to person. If you were going online and you had no clue where to start, what to do, I would suggest that you treat your online dating profile like you would a resume, right? Because all it takes is less than 5 seconds for a girl to look at your profile and be like, no, you're gone, you're X'd, right? And you can be like tossed off into like 500 other profiles that the girl might be looking through.
Right. Right, a girl could take one glance at a guy's profile.
It really is.
And be like, like, okay, no. What is a cringe-worthy red flag thing that a guy could put on their profile that they really shouldn't?
So first would be very bad photos, whether it's blurry photos, selfies, or shirtless pictures, or they have a bunch of their friends around and you're like, who am I looking at, right? Very boring or disengaging prompts. So for example, a question might be, oh, what do you like to do on Sundays? I like to eat, or I like to sleep, or what are some of your interests? Hiking. It's boring. It's not engaging. So it's hard for anybody to kind of pick up a conversation with you if they're interested in you, right? So I would suggest having very clear photos, something that an engaging sort of conversation starter. So let's say someone's like, oh, my favorite thing to do on a Sunday is go for brunch. I know a good spot. Let me, why don't you join me next time or something? Something that's a conversation piece, a good icebreaker, or even just tells the person that's looking at your profile something interesting about you that they can kind of relate to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sam, is the dating profile, that landing page, that resume, is the dating profile half the battle?
It really is. Honestly, it's getting that first step and getting a conversation started, and not staying in that conversation where it's just a pen pal, where you actually meet the person in real life, and then from there you're kind of building chemistry and building a connection, and just kind of pushing a relationship forward.
Right. All right. So Sam, I think it's time for hot takes. And if you have a hot take too, I'd love to hear yours. Okay. So my hot take is that I think the dating app has largely been a net negative for our dating culture. Yes. Maybe it was a cool idea. Maybe it made a lot of money. It was very profitable. But I think it's in my opinion, it's been more of a bad thing than a good thing. So that's sort of my hot take. What are your just initial thoughts about the dating app?
I think dating app serves a really great purpose in a sense where, especially when you're older, it's hard for you to kind of go out and meet new people or network, right? If you're busy with work, if you have like a life, a really busy life, it's hard to, you're not going out to clubs anymore to meet people. You're not a part of any athletic sports team anymore to meet people. So it serves that purpose in terms of being convenient. But it is really hard. It's really difficult. Like I said, you only get that one shot, that 1 minute, that, for someone to be able to kind of see you and maybe show some interest and maybe actually take the time to meet you outside of the dating apps. So it's great in that sense, but at the same time, a lot of people aren't having as much, what's that word I'm looking
Success?
for? Success. Yeah, success in dating apps. Yeah. Kind of.
If someone were to come to you and say, like, you know what, I am looking for a dating coach, but I don't want to use the dating app, would that be like really odd to you? And are there some advice you can give someone to be dating, but just not on the app?
Yeah, I mean, people can meet people outside of the dating apps, right? You can, go to a grocery store or go to a networking event, or just what people really have to do is make the time, put in the effort, and set the intention. That's what I would like to say. I joined a run club for myself, and it's a great way to meet people and to network, because I wanted to kind of have some physical goals, and I wanted to kind of go out there and find a community. So there's lots of ways to meet new people outside of the dating apps, right? You just have to kind of put yourself out there a little bit. What I would suggest is basically cast a wide net, right? Have the intention that you're going there to meet friends, because you never know. You could meet, you can go out to a community, maybe not meet somebody right away, but your friend or the person that you met might have a sister or a cousin or somebody that they know that would really match you, and you can meet someone there. So don't be discouraged is what I would say. And just go out there with the intention to kind of make friends, and if you make a friend or if you meet somebody, it's great, and if you don't, then you don't. But you definitely have to put yourself out there, and be aware that there's such a thing called dating fatigue. So it's also really okay to take a step back and maybe say, hey, you know what, I just want to take a break from dating and not go out there and just kind of work on yourself. Right? So
good. Thank you. Yeah. Sam, do you have a hot take as a dating coach? You've seen different things. You've experienced Vancouver dating culture yourself. What do you have a hot take you'd like to share with everyone?
Ooh, a hot take. I would say just don't be afraid to go out there alone, and have an open mindset, and be different and make a change in your life. If you're really looking for something different, you're gonna have to just do something different. So my hot take is just, don't be afraid to do things on your own and work on yourself.
That's good. To explore not only Vancouver,
Yeah.
but to know yourself really well.
Yeah,
And just to go out there, because dating is should be exciting,
it should be. Yeah.
right? Dating should be a place where you could meet new people,
Yeah.
and just go out there and make and just make friends and take risks, right?
Exactly. Because you never know. You can, even if you don't come out in a relationship, you can still make a lot of friends, right? So yeah.
That's awesome. Sam, why don't you share with us how we could follow you, or your Instagram and all that. How can people at home follow you?
Yep, so my Instagram handle is wingwoman.ca, and it's spelled WYNG woman, WOMAN.ca. Or you can reach me by email at Samantha@wingwoman.ca.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for joining us for our first episode. We talked on a lot of topics today, but we'd love to go into it in more depth next time. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you
for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. Wow.